Charisma Quotient. I'm your host, Kim Seltzer, a dating and makeover expert, where I will help you build confidence, make connections, and find love from the outside in. I'm back doing another episode of Where Are They Now? And for those of you who hadn't heard the first episodes of these series, I will recap. So as you know, I coach a lot of people. And of course, you have heard me coaching people live on this podcast with my Coaching with Kimmy episodes. And I also have a ton of clients who I send off into the world after coaching them. And it's so amazing and rewarding when I hear countless success stories and read thousands of emails of previous clients updating me on how their life has improved and often how they find love. So I do these Where Are They Now episodes to inspire and motivate you by hearing what happens to people after I work with them. And whether that is on a podcast or working with them over time as clients, I hope you listen to these and get inspired by people's successes and know that success can happen to you too. And it all starts with a call. So today I am bringing a very special woman on. Her name is HeyJune, who decided to coach with me after her friend referred me to her, who I helped years ago. And she had been in a couple of relationships, dated some, yet still wasn't able to meet the right men for her. And there was a pattern for her, definitely, of when she would meet men, they were what I call the tornado type. They would come in hot and heavy in a whirlwind, and then poof, as soon as they came in hot, they would leave. And it was like a whirlwind. And then when it would slow down, they would show their true colors, and often shady ones. So when she came to me, she had just moved here to LA and wanted help meeting people IRL in real life and become more social. And she wanted to learn how to date smarter this time around so that she could find a healthy relationship that actually lasted. And she recognized that there were some pitfalls and things that she was working on. And she knew she was too analytical, questioning much of what she did. She lacked emotional connections often and would be so in her head that she would lose opportunities to really get to know potential partners because she was so fearful of picking the wrong guy. And she had difficulties also just being open herself and in many ways, physically and with her mindset. And she knew that she had, let's face it, a little more serious energy. And she'll talk about that. So flirting, embracing her feminine side and being playful just wasn't in the mix at the point that I met her at. So of course, dating, well, it just wasn't fun. And on top of that, because of her career, it was hard for her to build a social life, including girlfriends. And as we worked together, the main goal was to get into the real world and connect with people naturally, because that's what she preferred, to gain her social and sexy confidence and understand how her own femininity worked and how to receive and how that all interplayed in who she was attracting. And so we worked on being more playful and letting go of the outcome so that she would be more open. And she learned to lead with more emotional connections, which was huge for her, and really express what she wanted by setting better boundaries. And this was in many aspects of her life. And because she did the work, like most of my clients, HeyJune found her man. But I'll let her tell you the rest of this beautiful story. Welcome. HeyJune, you there?
Hi, Kimmy. So good to be here.
Oh my God. Do you remember that girl that I just read about?
I do.
She's near and dear to you?
And I'm being honest, I don't know if I fully ever cracked the code. Like, as in, like, there's a part of her still that's part of me.
Yes.
Um, and I don't, but not in a bad way. Like, it's like there's aspects of her that I'm like, oh, I was able to like kind of take that and integrate it into like my new self in a positive way.
Well, and I love that you said that because, the notion is to never really change who you are. It's
Yeah.
about looking at some of the behavior, some of the patterns, so that you get a different result with who you are and what you're wanting. Right.
Yeah.
So but no, I mean, it's been such a journey, that you and I have been on and seeing you move and get integrated into this, LA scene but also socially. Anyway, obviously that was a recap. I would love for you to share more of like who you are and like where were you before you picked up the phone and called me? I'd love to hear just more about your life.
Yeah. I mean, basically exactly what you had described. So like the tornado types.
Yeah.
I was in a very long-term relationship a long time ago, like when I was younger, and hadn't dated for almost a decade after that because I was like, oh, like been there, done that. I don't want to be in anything serious. But then when I was ready to date again, the dating world had changed so much. Like from 2012 all the way to 2018, like just or 2019, so much has changed, and I had no idea how to uh I definitely recognize that I wasn't being my full self, to your point, like being my authentic self because I had lived a single life for so long. So there is like the dating atrophy piece that I was struggling with, but also just innate personality qualities that, I've been told over and over again, like you can't lead with that, you can't show that to men. Um, and so then I would like couch myself and my needs or my, these personality quirks, and it would just totally backfire. So I think I was pretty good at getting the guy hooked.
Mhm.
I think I was getting uh like I never really had trouble like going on dates, getting a date. But to your point, they were all like here today, gone tomorrow. They would typically end around like the 3 to 5 month mark, and I would be devastated. But I think the most devastating piece was that I was like, well, I made all these like sacrifices, like personal sacrifices, and it still didn't work. And the biggest sacrifice, which you point out, was like expressing my discomfort
Mm.
and just choosing not to do it most of the time. It's funny because I was serious and yet I was hiding my discomfort, which kind of it seems like oxymoron. Because if you're serious, like you would expose all your discomfort, right? And be like, don't do this, don't do that. But I was like, it was like a two-pronged thing where I was serious, but also like not being honest. So
Yeah. And I think that was the kind of like trepidation or fear, like it was like you wanted it, but you also feared it. And so there was this weird energy with it too. And
totally.
I want to go back to what you said just now, because I think that's really important to highlight. You said a lot of friends would tell you, you just can't lead with that. Like, what was that you were doing?
Oh, yes. So I was always told that I have a very like shocking sense of humor. I think people can even tell that in my content, or that I'll just blurt things out, or never with bad intention. It's just my sense of humor. So I was told I can't lead with that. Also, my career, I shouldn't lead with my career. I shouldn't, just kind of be upfront about what I do and my
Mm.
platforms and um, just so many little things. Even looks, like how you dress, like how you present yourself. You know, I hate to put it this way, but patriarchy kind of plays a big role, right? So you have to look presentable and you have to look pretty and you have to look perfect all the time. And now I'm like, wait, what? Who even told me that? Like, I feel like I don't even know where that came from anymore. But of course, like I would hook the guy because there's just like this picture perfect thing that I'm presenting in the beginning.
Mm.
But then to your point, there's this like weird energy of like being serious but not being upfront. So yeah, in hindsight, I recognize like, okay, yeah, of course I attracted guys who really wasn't in tune with really how I'm deeply feeling inside, but more in tune with like the exterior. And with just
Yes.
love bomb.
Yes, the love bomb thing. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned this because this is where I was kind of getting at. And I think, you listening, you'll understand this too, because so many, I think, people struggle, is that with the energy that you were putting out or not being your authentic self, let's just call it that, right? What kind of guys were you attracting? Like, what was the pattern? Because I do remember talking about that with you.
Like, like Prince Charming on paper,
Uh-huh. Yep.
like very good looking, very, very successful, although I don't know if I would think that way now. Uh, Seems emotionally open, but really not. When things get hard, they would stop being open.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Really good with the flirting aspect of things. Like, kind of give me butterflies because I was serious to your point, and they weren't in the beginning. And I was really drawn to that, like a moth to a flame. But then, of course, when emotions get deeper or when, we hit like a speed bump, that same flirtiness just dials back and they just freeze, don't know what to do.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and there's a yin and yang with that, and I think that was some of the stuff we were talking about is that when, the Prince Charming effect kind of thing, when they come in hot and heavy and strong, it makes you feel a certain way. And since you weren't leading with your emotions or being open, it caused this kind of chemistry, right? This like chemical charge or emotional charge, but it was a false sense of the real emotional connection that I think you and I were really working on, and I remember like that's kind of where it started, really understanding like, well, what is it that I'm feeling and focusing for the first
Yep.
time on your emotions and what you're wanting and what you're standing for and all of those things.
But if I may, I want to point out something, which is what you help me do is also like really give myself permission to be like, okay, I'm not feeling okay. So why not honor that? Because that was my number one issue. It's like all these dudes, the tall, dark, handsome, successful, or whatever. It's like, yeah, the minute they make me feel uncomfortable and I voice it and they still continue to, disrespect my boundaries, at that point, that's on me to just be like, okay, and then leave. And I wasn't doing that. That was the other issue. So I think you gave me huge permission to be like, you know what? Like, who cares? Just go. Like what you feel inside matters way more. Like you don't have to, and I think that is actually being part of being playful. Like, who cares about what happens? Stop being so stressed about the outcome. Like, be playful now. Like, you're not feeling playful, so go. Kind of like that.
Right, right. Trusting those instincts, like just going with the flow and how you're feeling. And I think you were so in your head with things, like it was very cerebral in the way that you were attacking relationships and, looking for kind of those details rather than going with here, like in,
Yeah.
the feeling inside. And yeah, well, yeah, let's go more with that. So, as we started getting into everything, what were some of the highlights for you that were like maybe turning points or things that you started feeling like a shift?
Yeah, I took your feedback to the extreme. Like I actually practiced it to the extreme because I remember we were doing in-person stuff too. And the two main feedback you gave was like, hey, like it's so hard to read you. Like,
Mm.
uh, and I didn't even know that. Like I didn't know. I think I'm so expressive, but I think in person is a bit different. I'm more expressive online, ironically. So I start to kind of like overdo the facial expressions and the body language like in person. And that was one of the things I was told not to do, you see, like when I first started dating. Like, don't be so like over the top or like don't be so loud or like, don't like drop F-bombs like start of the gate. So it's like, or like if I remember if I like had back pain or whatever, I would still try to like not show that. I wouldn't say like, oh, hey, can I just don't mind me. I'm gonna sit like this. My back hurts. Like I wouldn't say stuff like that. I would just continue to like be in that position. So that was a main thing that well not the main thing that was a first thing I dramatically shifted like being overly like signaling like my internal state of being physically. The other thing that I took to the extreme is like once I paid attention to how I felt, I gave myself permission to be like, okay, you know what, it doesn't matter why I feel bad. It really doesn't. Maybe I don't like his phone case. It doesn't matter what the reason is. I don't like it. I'm gonna go.
I
I
love
mean, that's a
that.
very dumb example, but you know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
because I think before the cerebral part of me was saying like, "Hey, Jen, you're just being unreasonable." Like you feel crappy because you have high standards and but you have high standards and you're not going to be anyone, so like I was like over analyzing my own feelings. So I shifted that to, you know what? I am going to be that unreasonable person.
Yeah. Oh, I like the way you're framing that too. And it's something that's really, I think, relatable because especially as you get into dating later in life, a lot of people start second guessing themselves and they overanalyze like every decision. And yes, I do remember when you started like just shifting into that and you're like, Kimmy, you'd be proud of me today. I just said what I wanted. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And it's so crazy that I wasn't doing that in the dating realm when
Yeah.
I think I was doing it, well, maybe not fully, but I was practicing it in other areas of my life. So when I applied that to the dating, along with the physical mannerisms, along with other tools you gave me, like chemistry analysis, it's just like it became like the perfect trifecta.
That's awesome. And what were some of the tools that you found were helpful in the way that you were? Because I mean, I always referred this as data dating in the beginning, and I'm like, remember, like collect the data first, don't get ahead
Yeah.
of it, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't know if like there were certain tools that just kind of like integrated for you.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the chemistry analysis actually,
Yeah, yeah.
because I mean, I was like on and off dating apps for a couple of years. I mean, as you know, like I wasn't a serious user of it, especially towards the end. I was like, screw this, you know?
Right.
But what I did do is, when I did find interesting leads, like, and would actually start going on dates, I actually applied the chemistry analysis pretty seriously. And I noticed a pattern. I noticed, oh, like scoring high on three categories, but scoring really low on one, or scoring low on two. Like there was this one guy, like I was sort of dating. He's actually very angry right now that I'm in a relationship because he's like trying to do a boomerang and be like, I'm sorry, all this stuff.
Oh, I
But
love boomerangers. And they always come when you're in a relationship. You notice that? That's
yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
He scored high on everything. And to be honest, like he even made me feel somewhat safe, you know?
Mm.
But the intellectual connection was super lacking. But then the old me would have been like, you know what? I can't like be unreasonable. I can overlook this. I can overlook this. And then of course, like I would get heartbroken down the line, right? Because, not everyone wants to feel like they're lacking something compared to the partner. So it was like an instant, like it was good that I like got to my decision faster using
Right.
the commission analysis. Yeah, that was really helpful.
Yeah, and I remember too, I think for you within the chemistry analysis, like really pinpointing the emotional chemistry piece, that was something I just don't think you were used to looking at as a priority
Yeah.
or of importance, right? Um, but what you said is really important because I think there's a lot of people who get caught up in, well, either I know I'm too picky, I'll just, I'll overlook some of the things that I'm not happy with because, and again, there's a balance with that, right? Because,
Yeah.
on one end, you want to be open and you don't want to close doors, but on the other hand, you don't want to settle and you don't want to like overlook things that might be red flags down the line or just not good for you down the line. So I
Yeah.
like to me when I observed you from an outsider, like I really saw you kind of trying to balance those two things of
Yeah.
being open but also like hey saying what you want say this
Yeah.
is not okay and then cutting it off when it just didn't work for you. So I was super proud of you when you started doing that.
It was a process. It was definitely a journey. And it's kind of funny because the my boyfriend now actually it constantly reminds me like, why don't you just say what you feel? Like when we were like hanging out with like mutual friends or
Oh,
whatever, because I would whisper stuff and be like, you should tell them that. You should tell them that. It's okay. You should tell them.
oh, I
So
love that.
and he's like, and I agree with how you feel. So you have my backing, like it's really cute. It's an
Well,
ongoing.
yeah, no, and so you're kind of like tipping the hat into like because I do want to hear more about like how you met him, but just the mere fact that he's encouraging the very area
Yeah.
that we really were trying to work on means to me that you were leading more with expression because you wouldn't have attracted a guy like that had you
Yeah.
not. So
Yeah.
I just want to give you credit for what you attracted right now. So yeah, let's get into it. So then during the journey, you're doing the work and really taking everything serious. How did he come about?
So we met, of course, like online, but when we actually met in person, we had to delete the apps. And that has never happened in my life. Like we deleted the apps before even meeting in person. And just to kind of connect it back to the emotional connection piece you were
Yeah.
talking about, I remember the first, so we matched and we like immediately talked on the phone. And I remember saying something like, because, and I would never usually say this before, but I remember saying something like, well, it's kind of annoying that you did XYZ. Like, if it wasn't the first phone call, it was like the second phone call. And then You see, this is where like usually in the past guys would be like, okay, you're rude for like saying that, or they would try to flirt back, but like in like a, you know, but you would know like, oh, like he's pissed off.
Yeah.
With this guy, he found it like super interesting and like intriguing.
So he
And every
already was different just in that. Yeah.
yeah, and then I would share like literally the first few phone calls. So anyway, just let me get that in a
Yeah.
second. So we matched. We deleted the apps in like 2 days. He asked me to be his girlfriend in like 7 days. I know it's so crazy. Met his parents like on the 10th day. It's insane. It's an insane timeline. But I think the reason why this worked is because he was very in tune with his feelings and he had learned so much from his past relationships that he knew exactly how he wanted to feel. So we kept saying stuff to each other like, "Do you find that funny? Because I find this funny. Do you find that upsetting? Because I like." We were actually comparing feelings about situations, people, movies, and um, and he said the only reason why I wanted to like progress this is because like he's like because we felt the same way about a lot of different things. Like that was his metric, like feelings. Isn't
It's
that
so
interesting?
cool. Interesting and almost predictable, to be honest, because like what I love about this is that he did the work too. And so you attract somebody else who was kind of like at your level with really like looking at yourself and pulling in and so it's like you attracted it's so funny how I'm not woo woo, as you know. However, I do believe in we attract what we put out,
Yeah.
and what we get back is usually a direct reflection in the mirror and some
Mhm.
level, and so I love that. And the thing that I was interested in, I think a lot of people want to know, how do you think you were different this time around too, like when you met him? What were some things that you solidly felt like a shift in?
Man, I mean, I part of it, I'm not gonna lie to you, part of it I do think is luck. But the way I shifted, meaning the like the ways in which I had control, I remember. Oh, you actually told me this, like share stories.
Yes.
But the difference this time, and we talked about this, like I'm a great storyteller, like I do that for a living. But before, I would tell stories and I would assume the other person inferred how I felt or like can extrapolate my feelings. Like, okay, if I told you that somebody punched me, I assume you know that I was upset about that, you know?
Right.
Because
Right.
that is right? Because that's kind of like, it's the whole storytelling technique, like show, not tell, that kind of a thing. But
Hmm.
you can't really do that in
No.
dating, or especially men in the beginning. Like they have to still like learn and, pick up shorthands. So with this guy, sorry, not this guy, my boyfriend hates it when I say that. So with my current boyfriend, I remember again, like over the top, sharing over the top stories
Yes.
and just using all the adjectives I know to describe how I feel. Which, by the way, that's another tool you gave me too, like the mood meter, which I think is like logging your
Yes.
feelings.
Yes. Yes. And it all works together because I do remember that and how good you always are a good storyteller to your point. But that was a piece that was missing. Like you didn't insert the feeling in the context of what you were sharing. So I didn't know that. I love that you did that with him.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I didn't even realize I was doing that. Like I'm realizing that now as I'm telling
Yeah.
you. Like, oh yeah, like because he would tell me like he would get really excited when I would tell him like I was angry or I was upset or he'd be like, yeah. So he'd be like, tell me more. But and then he would listen to that, circle back around in a few days and update me and say like, well, you shared this with me and you said you were upset, so I did this. Like I changed this. And I'm
Oh.
like, oh, it wasn't about you at all. He goes, no, I know, but I wanted to like make sure it doesn't trigger you, you know? So that was, yeah, I mean, that was really helpful. That was like a great feedback to me, like, oh, this guy listens and cares about my
Like what a
feelings.
novel idea, right? Like a guy who actually listens to
Right,
you and your
right,
feelings. But how
right.
you were different is that you actually shared. And see, that's the only way that you're going to know whether or not a partner cares or listens is for you to share. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like you're assuming, but then, yeah, cut to 8 months later, 12 months into a relationship, and then you finally decide to share and they're nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's on you that you never like really kind of tested that out. So the fact that you did that right from the get-go and the fact that he hung on to that, that he listened and circled back and made sure that you were comfortable, even though it didn't even have anything to do with him, that is
Yeah.
such a great sign right there.
Totally. Because previous guys, I would share, maybe not to this extent. I would still share, and it would either like fall on deaf ears
Yeah.
or they would like kind of feign empathy, but it's so different. It was shallow.
Yes. Yeah. How else is he different than some of these guys, or even like the way you interact, possibly?
He's very proactive. Like,
Ah.
and I've never, and I mean like in a very consistent, like predictable way. Like, I'm so used to guys think about just like tomorrow. He think this, my boyfriend thinks about months ahead or like weeks ahead. And that's also because, well, the other thing here too is that like he's been working since he was very, very young.
Mm.
Um, so I think he had to learn very early how to plan for things like risks, speed bumps,
Yeah.
uh, working hard. So there is a little bit of life and career that goes into like one's character for sure. But the main thing is proactiveness. The other thing is, oh, this is a big one. Not being afraid of talking about difficult things.
Mm. Oh, that's
Again, I know it
nice.
sounds so crazy.
No, that's great. No, talk more about that.
My previous, I mean, I'm like really airing like all my dirty laundry, but my previous boyfriends would, you can tell they kind of go, like kind of groan when you're like, hey, like, can we talk about whatever?
Uh-huh.
Or like, or like, they kind of get into this mode of like, okay, I'm listening, but they look scared or like they think like some shoe's gonna drop or they'll
Hmm.
push it back, like, hey, like, can we actually talk tomorrow? There was always like this like, oh, I don't want to like, deal with upset Hey June, you know?
Uh-huh.
Even though once again, I didn't even express my feelings, so how do they know I'm upset? I don't know. It's basically a version of me that they didn't want to see, like the even more serious version. But with my boyfriend, he's very much like, yeah, let's talk. Like tell me everything. Like I want to hear all the details. And then as soon as I tell him like this one thing, he's like, okay, let's fix it. Let's do it. Like instant integration.
Wow.
A
That
part of
must
it
be,
is
yeah.
a,
Part of
a
it
part
is,
of it is his career. Like I
yeah.
really truly think that plays into that. But yes, that was
Yeah.
it.
And, to your point, I mean, we all become a certain way given our past experiences and, depending on what we're good at, how we like to solve things, how we like to cope with things. But it's really like how that manifests in relationships is so important. It doesn't really matter like where he got it from. The fact that it feels good to you. And there's a level of almost like feeling safe when someone's able to be more predictable, more of a planner, because you're
Yeah.
so used to the unpredictable. Like you were really used to navigating like what's going to happen next,
Yeah.
which is why you had to be kind of that even girl, even though authentically there may have been times where you didn't feel so even and that you wanted to express things. But because they were uneven, you had to be the stable one. Well, that doesn't feel very good to always have to do that. So with
Right.
him, it sounds like you're able to be yourself because he's like encouraging you to express yourself. He's not afraid when you're angry or anxiety driven or whatever it is, right? And he's a planner, so that makes you feel safe. And, like with women, especially at the end of the day, like a man who makes us feel safe, that's
Hmm.
huge, in ways of
Yeah.
trust and really feeling that commitment and reciprocity with each other. So I
Hmm.
love all this so far. And like I said to you off air, like again, wherever this ends up, you already attracted something different in your life.
So
And
different. It's
to
crazy.
right. And to that, like I commend you. Because you did the work. You took it seriously in a good way for yourself to like shift
Yeah,
and
right.
change. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just so proud of you. Well, like, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in your boat who, especially related to where you were. What would you say to someone who's thinking about shifting this area of their life? Maybe they want to do coaching, but they just don't know how to pull the trigger? Like, is there anything that you could, maybe advise them on?
Well, the first thing I would say is what's going to change if you remain the same? Like that was a question I had to ask myself. I was like, I'm not getting results. Like, what the hell am I doing? Like, clearly I need some serious feedback. And also like proven strategies and methods that work. And you had an amazing track record. And I have peers in the space, dating, coaching space, but they're very like like playing games kind of driven. Like you do this in the first day and this in the second day and third, whatever, or like, and I did all that and it still wasn't working.
Hmm.
So I would say to anyone who's really stuck in a deep pattern and you just don't want to waste any more time being in that pattern, yeah, work with someone who has like actually proven track record, which is you. So
Oh.
yeah.
Thank
I,
you.
I I strictly went off by reputation, to be honest.
Hmm.
Um, because like I know how this look. There's so many coaches, right? But it's like if
Right.
you want to separate the cream from the crop, you have to really look at like uh who they've helped, how they've helped, how quickly they got results. And it was pretty astounding that, the client that we are both thinking about, like her and her 15 of her friends all got married. That's great. That in and of itself is crazy. I hope they're paying you commission every year on
Oh
something.
God. If that were the case, I don't think I'd still be doing this. But no, I am, it's beyond that. What it just warms my heart. Like, and the thing is, that's the common denominator. I will commend all of the people that friend referred me to, is that you all are hard workers, you're coachable, and then you actually do the work. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, some of you listening, you might say, well, yeah, I know I need to do that, right? Intellectually, there are things that maybe you're listening to a podcast or you're reading a book and say, oh, I should change that. But like, at what point do you take the action and actually do it? And all of you who got the results, you actually did it. And to me, honestly, like, again, I always say I'm just the flashlight. I just shine the path, but it's up to you to walk through it, and you did. Like you said, you took it seriously. Like, you really did your homework, and that's why I knew you would have success. So I'm just so excited. I can't wait to see where this all goes. Is there any kind of parting words that you wanted to end here with anybody listening?
Yes, this just came to me. I want to tell folks like this is really an inside job and you just sparked this for me. Like I think a lot of the work that we did together was you pointing out inner patterns. Like you feel
Mhm.
this way because you grew up in this environment and had grew up with these types of parents. Like no one's ever taught me that as it relates to dating. Um,
Mm.
and there's books on like narcissism and attachment styles, all that out there, but none of it's really like personalized or tailored to you. So I think you like really bridge that so well. Like why, like how you became who you are today, and how do we make that into something that works for you in the current dating world?
Yes. No, I'm really glad you said that. And because there really isn't any cookie cutter approach that's out
Hmm.
there that's like one size fits all. We all come from different journeys, and our past is connected to the future and the choices we make, the patterns that get created. And it's not to dwell on the past and say, woe is me, and sit on a couch for 10 years. It's about, okay, well, this is where we came from. Now I understand it, but this is where I want to go. And how can I use what I have to get to the next place? And
Yeah.
so I'm so happy you said that. Thank you so much for coming
Yay.
on and sharing your journey. And I know you're quietly excited.
I am, and I'm so happy that I became one of your success stories. I was like, no, I can't let Kimmy down.
Yeah, and you know what? Even if that was the driving force to get you here, that's cool.
Right, right. I'm gonna pass this class, so it
Yeah,
worked
you're
out.
like, I'm gonna be on this podcast if it takes everything I got. So anyway, thank you again. And yes, I will hopefully see you on the other side. We'll keep going with all this. I can't wait to see what is going on with you guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
So thanks for joining me today. This has been the Charisma Quotient. I'm your host, of course, Kimmy Seltzer. And remember, you can build confidence, make connections, and find love from the outside in. And if you want to know more, make sure you go to my site, kimmyseltzer.com, as always. And here's the thing, if you're having a hard time yourself building emotional connections, just like you heard today, and are somewhat guarded, or maybe you're having a hard time being vulnerable. And because of that, you're attracting lopsided relationships. I'd love to help you become a more authentic dater, like we talked about. And my next co ed interactive workshop is coming up. It just so happens January 29th, depending on when you're listening to this. And it's called Fearless Dating. Transform your love life and confidence and authenticity. And this is where you're going to learn to overcome your dating fears, be a more confident dater, and experience more authentic connections on dates overall. This is not your typical workshop. It's not a talking head. You're going to get a chance to be in an interactive VIP room with me, and you'll leave the workshop inspired, confident, and ready to navigate the dating world with a positive, fun attitude. So just go to stophatingdating.com or just click the link you see to register. But hurry, as you know, these spots go quickly. And remember, working on you is working on your dating life. That's all for now.